was home alone, just like any other night. My roommate had gone to visit his family for the weekend, so it was just me in our apartment. I was lying in bed, mindlessly scrolling through my phone, when I heard it. The unmistakable sound of the front door being unlocked. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. My roommate wasn't due back until tomorrow, and it was too late for anyone else to be visiting. Still, I called out, hoping it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. No response. With trembling hands, I crept out of my room and peeked into the hallway. The dim light from the kitchen revealed a shadowy figure, tall and menacing, holding something glinting in his hand, a knife. Fear seized me, but I knew I had to act fast. Without hesitation, I bolted back into my room and slammed the door shut, locking it behind me. I could hear the sound of footsteps approaching, followed by the chilling sound of scratching at the door. I dialed 911, my voice shaky as I whispered my address into the phone. To my surprise, they told me that they were already coming to my location because someone called them from the same building. As I waited for help to arrive, I heard the front door click shut. No doubt the intruder had heard me calling the police. When the police finally arrived, they were already aware of the situation. Another caller had reported a similar incident in the neighboring apartment. As they went to investigate, they made a disturbing discovery. In the neighboring apartment, they found my neighbor's son shaking. His parents were out that night. He was playing a video game in his room when a man showed up behind him, tied him up. The man was tall and wore a baseball mask and had a knife. The intruder had stolen some money and left the boy traumatized, but miraculously unharmed. The poor boy had freed himself and called his parents, who immediately called the police. And do you know what is the most disturbing part? The intruder had entered both apartments without any signs of forced entry, indicating that he had the keys. Keys he shouldn't have had. It sent shivers down my spine to think that someone had been lurking in our midst, planning who knows what. Despite their efforts, the police never managed to track down the intruder. He vanished without a trace. In the months that followed, I was so traumatized. I started keeping a gun by my bedside and had nightmares almost every day. I remember that night like it was yesterday. My brother and I were home alone, our parents off on a weekend trip, leaving us to fend for ourselves in our big suburban house. I was deep asleep when my brother barged into my room, terror etched across his face. He had a gun in his trembling hands, whispering urgently for me to shut up and follow him. Without question, I obeyed, the fear in his voice sending shivers down my spine. Without hesitation, I swung my legs out of bed and stumbled after him into the darkness. The floorboards creaked beneath our weight as we made our way to the window. With trembling hands, my brother pushed it open. He motioned for me to go first, and without a second thought, I hoisted myself up and over the windowsill, landing in the soft grass below, and he did the same. We sprinted to our neighbor's house. Inside, we huddled together, my brother's hands still clutching the gun tightly. As we waited for the police to arrive, he recounted what had happened while I slept soundly. He had been in the kitchen at around 2 a.m., grabbing a late-night snack, while I was peacefully sleeping in my room, when he heard loud banging on the door. Peering through the peephole, he saw her, a woman with thick black hair and big sunglasses. Just the sight of her sent a shiver down his spine. She begged for water, pleaded with him to open the door, but he knew better. He told her that our parents were sleeping, hoping she would leave us alone. She told him that she knows that he was alone. Then, without warning, she gestured to someone behind her, and the noise now was coming from the kitchen glassy door. Terrified, my brother raced to our father's room, grabbing the gun from the bedside table. But even as he held it in his trembling hands, he knew he couldn't use it. There were two of them, and he was just one scared teenager. In a desperate bid to protect us, he cut the power to the house and made his way to my room. And that's when he woke me, and our terrifying night began. When the police arrived, they found us huddled together, trembling with fear. The couple who had broken in had a long history of robbery, and they had been watching our house for some time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I remember it like it was yesterday, even though it happened years ago. My parents went to see some relatives for the weekend, leaving me alone at home. Being a teenager, I thought it was cool to have the house to myself. So I called up my friend, and we decided to have a movie night. Everything was going fine until we heard a strange noise coming from the basement. Normally, I'd just assume it was my cat, Tommy, getting up to his usual mischief. That darn cat always found a way to sneak out and explore. And he always jumped from the window of our basement when he came back. So we had to always open the door of the basement that led to the living room for him. So we did what any curious but slightly nervous teenagers would do. We went to check it out. As we approached the basement door, I remember feeling this knot in my stomach, like something wasn't right. But I pushed it aside, thinking it was just nerves. When I opened the door, though, my heart practically stopped. There were two guys down there, both armed, dressed head to toe in black. The tall one had this menacing look about him, while the shorter one seemed more jittery, like he was on edge. Before we could even scream, the tall guy spoke up, his voice cold and steady. He said they were here just to hide out for a bit, that they didn't mean us any harm as long as we did what they said. My friend and I were frozen, too scared to even move. They herded us upstairs to my parents' bedroom, turning off all the lights so no one would suspect a thing. They took our phones, leaving us powerless to call for help. My friend got tied up while I just stood there, feeling numb and helpless. We could hear police sirens outside, but we couldn't do anything because they were watching us and never left their guns for a moment. Finally, at around 5 a.m., they left, warning us not to contact the police about what happened that night, or they'd come back for us. They even took a picture of us before leaving, threatening us that even if they went to jail, they will send someone for us. I remember that we were so terrified to the point that we couldn't leave the bedroom even though we knew they were gone, until we heard loud banging on the door around 10 a.m. Loud and insistent. My heart raced as I peeked out, half expecting to see those guys again, but instead, it was a police officer asking us if we'd seen anything suspicious the night before. Turns out, those two guys had tried to break into a nearby house, armed and dangerous, and they'd run off when they heard the cops coming.